Yeah, it's.
We'll assume that Councillor Laws is live.
Yep, hang on. In a matter of speaking.
Can you listen, I hope?
Of course I
Make sure we get it was a dog.
All right. Again, welcome to today's finance meeting, the first finance meeting since Donald Trump lost. So it's auspicious, really.
He hasn't prepared that yet.
No.
You don't know
Donald
that for a fact.
Firstly, we have apologies from Councillor Deakin and Councillor Hobbs who are on Council Business and Central. We have Councillor, so if someone moved that those apologies, Wilson, seconded by Councillor Hope. Those in favour?
Aye.
And we have attending by Zoom Councillor Laws by the look of it, and certainly Councillor Forbes.
He changed his photo briefly.
Yeah, did he? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was right in the middle. Can I get the mover and seconder?
Moved by Wilson, seconded by Hope.
Thank you.
And we have no additions to the agenda, so we'll confirm that agenda as is. I'll just remind councillors that if they have a conflict of interest that they perceive, if they remember that they need to stand aside and let us know that. So is there any conflicts that are noted? No. We have no requests for public forum.
I'll move that the minutes be confirmed.
Second.
Moved Calvert, seconded Wilson.
Thank you.
Those in favour?
Aye.
Item 6 was our actions. Any comment from those?
Just
Councillor Calvert.
briefly, Chair. I really like that there's a date at the end of these actions. Fills me with some confidence. But the 31st of December is a unlikely sort of time for us to be doing things, isn't it?
The environment never stops, so we just keep on keeping on.
I'm just saying it would be often better to put things to before the next meeting or something that.
I believe the resolution was by the end of the year, so that's why I.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, noted. And matters for consideration, we move to item 7.1, and I'll welcome Mr. Donnelly and Mr. Rossler to take us through that process.
Thank you, Chair. We've reached a point in the LTP process where it's appropriate for Council to consider and hopefully decide on how we consult for the LTP. So on that, the cover report has a detailed communications and engagement plan attached. In that detailed plan, there are two options. And importantly, some strategic context around why staff are recommending an option one. And as you get into the detail, you'll see that it lists out the two options and importantly the advantages and disadvantages around those. And then finally the cover report under recommendation 3 is recommending a decision of the committee to support option 1 in terms of that approach. So I'll just assume that the report has been read. The options are clearly stated out there in the cover report, and open it up to Council. Thank you.
Mr. Rossler. So I'll open the floor for discussion. Councillor Wilson.
Questions?
Questions?
Yes. Yep.
Sorry, mine are questions. I'm not discussing them.
Yep. Might slip a Freudian slip.
Thank you. Thank you. From what I'm understanding, and this is the context I don't have here, or maybe I've missed it, is this will be a game changer in, I think there'll be a substantial increase in what we are going to be doing and quite a change in the focus of our involvement this time. Would that be a fair comment?
It seems to be shaping up that way, yes. You could say that.
And so the next question, if I may, is in order to articulate that as widely as possible and to engage people, which I think is the purpose of this, do you think that a substantial change can be fairly construed on a postcard?
The answer to that is clearly no, and it's not being communicated on a postcard. So perhaps some explaining is required around option 1 and 2.
So the postcard is basically to publicise the LTP consultation. And in terms of that, what we mean is provide a link to the consultation document, provide some key messages, and also provide your details for people to engage with you directly, on the LTP. So the piece where the influencing, I guess, if you like, or the engagement comes about is through the other options that can be accessed. So the video that we're proposing that the chair and councillors make to explain the LTP, the access online to the consultation document, which will be where all the explanation is, the ability to also talk to trained customer service staff, rural liaison staff, etc., who can talk about the LTP, and access to the printed copies if people should so desire them. So what we've tried to do is, whereas in the past we've had drop-in sessions where you might stand in a hall and talk to 5 people, we're trying to make it so that you have a face that's digital. We know that 90% of our ratepayers pay their rates online, so we know at least 90% of our ratepayers are engaging digitally.
Sorry, if I set up an automatic payment with my bank, that doesn't mean that I've gone on.
No, that's different. That's different to paying online. Automatic payments are a very small percentage of the payments that we receive. This is people physically going in and paying online. It's a different thing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I understand that. I had understood that from the report. Thank you. So, what I suppose the next question is
subsequent. Yep.
Is everything in the postcard relies on people going to the internet and taking that extra step and that step easily in order to find out what we're doing. Would that be a fair comment?
Not quite. No. There's a clear messaging to you can pick up the phone and call us, and then the whole analog paper thing kicks in, and you actually get to talk to one of our friendly customer services people, and very quickly you'll have the printed media in front of you and the ability to, actually manually write a submission if you so choose. So it's the best of both worlds, actually. And look, right across the sector now, this is the way it's going. This is no thing. No, maybe not. And that's where the debate's at. I appreciate that.
Councillor Calvert.
Is this a time to be asking questions about the key messages?
Sure. Yeah.
Certainly, yes.
That's my first question. Supplementary questions. I've got some concerns about the high-level messages and the consultation topics. I think the fourth of the high-level messages is not a good message. It's got 2 bits in it, and partly it says something that we've already said above. We've got a lot of work to do and we need to fund and those things. And partly it says we've got low rates compared with other people, which I don't think is a useful message. How can you consult on that? I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why we've got high or low rates compared with.
The question from that is?
Well, the question is, can we these are proposed as high-level topics, I'm proposing that we have the first 4 and leave the 4th one out, high-level messages. If this is the time to talk about this, is that a quick? Can we just leave one of those out, or do we have a time to talk about this, or have they been? When do we set them in concrete? And as for the consultation topics, the number 3, I'd like to see how we deal with the fact that we've spent more rather than paying back the 0% rates increase. Again, I'm not sure whether this is the day or the time or the question is that. Yep. Is this the?
So this is the best. This is the best sort of we can do with high level messaging and with the consultation topics, without having got further in the LTP process. So we've had to anticipate to give you some.
So we'll get another.
But as part of the workshop tomorrow, I mean, you'll give us more guidance, and that will help us to shape up what those messages are, because you might make some changes to what's proposed. So, or you might decide that something's palatable or not palatable.
So these are just 4 examples. So, this is what they could be.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, these sort of high-level messages are the things that I'm thinking about at the moment. For the purposes of the plan, we just tried to keep them really simple. But, absolutely they may be nuanced or not be the messages that you want to promote.
It sort of matters if we're thinking of doing a shorter version to put out to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
What those ones
absolutely.
are.
So we would revise those high-level messages as we progress through the process.
Yeah. Mr. Ollie.
I think the key thing there is, because as Sarah says, we're anticipating it. All that is a placeholder. There'll be one of the key messages will be the funding discussion, around there's the quantum of we're anticipating increases anyway, and there's still a deficit from the current year we're in. Yep. So all we're saying is one of the key messages will be how are we funding all of this?
That deficit.
Yeah, and we'll firm that up as we progress further through the process, because we have to actually get to the point that we know what that number's going to be.
And Mr. Ross has got in there that he requires a decision from us, and has anticipated that we'll do that tomorrow in the long-term plan workshop.
No, we won't.
No,
because we don't make decisions in workshops.
Absolutely correct, 100%. But we will have a discussion on that matter to give greater guidance.
Sorry, didn't mean to. Just that.
Correct. So tomorrow will be a very good place to discuss that issue, and then at some later stage we'll make
it a step further in our thinking.
Thank you. Any further discussions?
Yes. Sorry.
Just one moment, please, Mr. Lord. I've got Councillor Robertson, and then I'll take you next. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question about whether or not we are also planning to tailor messages for specific local communities. So whether that be through local, print media or radio, or I don't know how we would do it, but is there a thinking of breaking it down to, a more tailored local message?
I think that's possible. Absolutely.
It'd be really useful, particularly for ones that have targeted rates.
Could I just jump in there? That's usually the case.
Cool.
Where you've got something special happening in a scheme, for example, and we want to target some communication around what we're proposing over. We would definitely peel something off, and you can do something quite targeted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Laws, if you're free.
My dog's just gone mad at the moment, sorry. Listen, excuse me. No, I'm going to have to get rid of the dog first.
She found a rabbit.
Can I ask
Councillor Wilson, certainly.
Sorry, I'm a bit slow off the mark.
No problem.
Can I just understand the need for this actual determination, given the CEO's answer to Councillor Calvert about this is going to be a moving feast really as we develop the plan tomorrow and whenever else we have meetings. Do we have to decide on option 1 or option 2 today?
Yes, please.
Okay.
as I understand it, simply from when we finally make the decision of what our priorities will be, that will be simply a typo change in what's in front of us. Would that be correct, Mr. Ross?
That's right.
This is just background of where we've got now in terms of the workshopping that we've had. It's just context.
Yes, sir. Yep, I've got you there. Mr. Laws is still gone. Councillor
I'm
Forbes.
here. Sorry.
Lexi, you're muted.
I'm here.
Apologies. Am I right in thinking that if we took the postcard approach, we could actually have the most relevant for those communities messaging changed quite easily? So we could have actually targeted postcards, which would be very difficult to do, I think, if you printed a document. If you could easily print different postcards, couldn't you?
I think we could. We just have to look at that, look at the details of doing that, but I wouldn't see why not.
It might be an interesting way of doing it.
That highlights different options.
Yeah.
No. Same postcard.
No.
Same amount of postcards. So it'd just be that you'd have
Lots. Yeah.
2, 3, 4 different postcards.
Yeah. And you could perhaps do that in FMUs or whatever anyway, so that could be... Could we have a look at that, Mr. Rossler?
Yeah, anything's possible.
Excuse me.
So I'm getting a nod from comms, but there are some complexities in it. But yep, it's a great idea. And yes, at a broad level, I think we could do it. So, for example, with broad level, I mean differentiation between Queenstown and Dunedin.
Exactly.
Because there's some different things going on in terms of our investment proposals. So, there's some nuancing behind the scenes to make that happen, but
Councillor Laws.
Well, that's exactly the point that I was going to make. If you've accepted the fact that you're having a video from chair and councillors talking about key issues of the consultation, then we should be going into each of the wards with a separate presentation that's most relevant to them. So, for example, in Dunstan, I see no reason why we shouldn't be doing a roadshow of our LTP and that it should involve governance. So that's Wanaka, Queenstown, Waimaka, Alexandra, Cromwell, in exactly the same way that we're currently consulting on FMUs for the values. This is the most important document this council will publish for its region that isn't centrally driven for the next 3 years. And I think this is an adequate consultation, option one. And I think that we need to be much more extensive in getting to those communities where these proposals will have the greatest effect.
Another quick question, Andrew. I wonder if we have numbers from the last LTP as to the numbers of people that actually attended those roadshows.
They were low, very low. In some
I was
cases,
one of 4 people in Queenstown.
yeah.
But we didn't promote it
as
properly, that's why.
Well, that's an opinion, I suppose.
Mrs. Gardner.
Look, what we know is that in the past, and I've talked with you about this before, Councillor Laws, we have had farmers markets and we've had roadshows, and you get very little engagement. It takes up a lot of time, not just your time, but staff time. There's often accommodation and other costs involved. And actually the level of engagement you get is less. What we thought, based on some of the feedback that you've been giving us this year about wanting to be more connected in and having the opportunity to talk to your constituents, was we put you front and centre on the back of the postcard with all your details, and then the people who really want to talk to you will call. And you can have the opportunity for a direct conversation. They then might want to choose to keep your postcard and have your details, for future reference. So you get that one-on-one contact rather than standing, you know, in a hall or in a location where actually the time doesn't suit somebody, you know, so you're only ever going to get a handful of people anyway, which is what we know. And so we're trying to think about how do we do this where you get maximum engagement. So the video is one, because that video will go everywhere. You know, you can just imagine it. We can make sure that it pops up on stuff if we want and other things like that. So you get maximum exposure, and then there's also maximum opportunity for people to call you and have a conversation or an email or whatever the case may be, because they can do it at a time that works for them.
Councillor Scott, Councillor Robertson, then Councillor Calvert.
Yeah, no, thank you. My question is, I'm just trying to figure out, is there any way that we can just improve that interface between the community, getting the information? So, for example, I'm thinking, are you suggesting somebody in the community could ring me up because my telephone number's on the postcard? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just wondering, you know, how do I pass that information on in an efficient way that represents, you know, the value of that information, so it doesn't sort of get lost and it's equitable? And so that's one thing that I'm just sort of wondering, how do we do that? Is it an email thing as opposed to, or is there a template that we can sort of fill something in, this person, you know, and then I'm also wondering, you know, how our community survey dovetails with this. Is that later than the... Later. It's later. But is there some way that we can, as opposed to me coming along to the council and say, oh, that's right, you know, Bill and Sally said this, is there some more efficient way of getting onto that information so it can be passed on efficiently and equitably?
Yeah, I mean, there's a way that we can, you know, we could devise a way so that you can feed information back if that's what you wanted to do. I suspect that people will ring you for very specific issues that relate to them rather than, you know, I just want to have a chat about the LTP generally.
Yeah. And as Kate's just reminded me, you know, like there is the normal submission process.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so what I'd be inclined to do, you know, say somebody called you, you have the conversation, but then you say it's really important that you make a submission. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just trying to think, you know, last time, what were the numbers that we achieved last time through the submission process?
Do you remember?
We are
off memory around 650 or something, I think.
Yeah, so that's significant. Like that's a heck of a lot more than attending hall meetings, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
But you've got to remember there's varying levels of what those submissions were. Some were simply just responding with a form and going, I like this or that, versus the usual sort of 40 or 50 very in-depth, high-quality submissions we get from, you know, the key stakeholders who aren't turning up to public meetings or roadshows, who are, you know, who we are communicating with all the time. And those, to be fair, they are the submissions that take a lot more consideration than somebody who simply says, yes, I tick option A versus option B.
So just, if I may,
yes, certainly.
Or is the key opportunity when they submit and they go onto the website that they can then fill in some questionnaire there? You know, would that be a benefit? Like previously, we've had a number of specific questions and there's been, you know, some of them have been challenged, but is there an opportunity there to get the information better? You know, like there's 10 key questions that we can ask, or something. It's an instant question, just to make the whole process robust.
We could think about that. So give you some key questions that you would then put to whoever called you.
No. Through. So on the postcard, we refer them to a website. They go to the website and say, look, when you submit, you may want to consider answering these 10 questions.
Right.
That's
So
what
you're
we-
talking
that's
about
what we-
trying to incorporate the customer survey?
A little bit.
Yeah.
No.
I don't think we should mix the two.
The consultation document has the
But it
key
does have
issues
key questions.
and it asks the question. And it has, around those key things, it has the options for those. And then we also have usually we have a space where they can provide any other feedback that they want. But we have that. The consultation has a form for them to answer the questions that we are consulting on.
Yeah.
That's the statutory process.
Yeah, but previously they were relatively limited questions, weren't they, Nick?
Yeah, because you're asking the questions on what we're consulting on. This is the formal consultation.
Yeah.
It's not a general, what do you want to know? We've done a whole lot of that already through things like the community outcomes, strategic directions, all of that is feeding into the LTP. Now we're getting to the business end of it where we go through the statutory process with consultation.
Yeah. And I think, Mr. Chair, my final point is that I actually think that maybe is the business end, is, once we agree, if it's online, it's just how they interpret the information they've got and how that translates into a submission is, to me, deserves some scrutiny. Yeah.
We can bring all that to you in advance of it going out.
Questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Robertson.
I was wondering if it was time to move the recommendations. Is that possible? Or have we got more questions?
I have one more question.
Okay.
But then I'll certainly come straight back to you, Councillor Robertson.
I'm just wondering whether we can do a slight amalgam of the two and that putting the actual document physically out in more places.
So libraries and things?
Well, I wasn't just thinking library. I was thinking I'm sitting in the middle of the Ida Valley and the pub, the shop, places where people get together and talk to each other. And if those people said, have you had a look at this? What a fabulous document, or whatever they was going to say. I'm just thinking there's more places that we could get a hard copy out to. Just that aren't everybody, but that are places that people have interactions or congregate or anyway. Just can we do some of that?
Yeah, sure.
People might all have different ideas about what sort of.
It's a very good point. And Councillor Hope.
Can I just build on that from Councillor
Certainly.
Calvert? This is our little Strathtorrey School newsletter, and we talked about what we've just been all doing with FMUs, and we've been encouraging it, and it's great. So why not? Why can't we think slightly differently in our rural communities? I think it's a great idea, and I really endorse that. There's a lot of people in a lot of rural areas that come together to congregate, and it's not just at libraries now, it's a different world out there. Yep. I think we have to think outside the square and be clever.
Thank you, Councillor Hope.
I'm happy to second Councillor Robertson's motion.
So I have, I will take that first because my first was from the hand from the floor. That I'll take, I'll go to Councillor Robertson first.
Yep, thanks. So I'd like to move the recommendations 1 to 4 as they are, which is option 1. We've heard some discussion on that in ways that it can be refined to pick up some locally specific messaging, and there are ways that print copy can be distributed as well in those local settings. So I'm comfortable that that's a good way forward. Also heard from Councillor Scott around how will councillors effectively feed into what will be a formal consultation process at that point through receiving phone calls. So I think that's something that will need thought about. Whether it's worded that it isn't making a submission when you ring, I can, have a think about that, but it is a formal consultation process. It's a good point. The other point is Councillor Calvert's was around key messaging, and I agree with her that those aren't our key messages. I don't think it's helpful to say that most of what we're doing is because the government tells us that we have to do it, or because we're catching up because we haven't done it in the past. The reason that we're doing this, and we're asking communities to investors that we've heard from them that they're really important to our communities and to our society, to be investing in the things that we're investing in, and to clearly word that in a proactive and constructive manner is the way that I think that we should be communicating. It's not being done to us. We are taking an approach whereby we are doing the things that our community needs us to be doing. So those are the only things that I had to say. Thank you.
And have I a seconder for?
Yeah.
A seconder.
Can I just speak briefly?
And you may talk. Yeah.
Hey, so look, this is moving with the times. I did not appreciate, before I read this report, that 90% of our ratepayers are in that digital space now. I would have thought it'd be 10, 15, 20% less than that. So I feel really comfortable that we're moving towards this approach for the annual plan LTP. And I think the other key point I'd like to make is this is a concept at this stage. It's still an evolving process, and we will have an opportunity to see a more refined comms and engagement plan further down the track. Thank you.
Can I just clarify something?
Certainly, point of clarity. Yep.
The second bullet point, a postcard delivery to each household publicising blah, blah, blah. Does that mean that it's actually going to go into every letterbox in Otago?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Can we see that is, so that's all 22,000 households?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
122.
Yeah.
122, Michael?
122,000, yeah, sorry, yeah.
No,
We're talking ratepayers?
ratepayers, 200.
40,
No. We've got 220,000 as our population, but I don't know how many households. We've got 20,000 households, sorry, I've just remembered in Dunster.
120,000 ratepayers, which would roughly equate to households. So there might be a few less because some will pay on multiple, but and 225,000 population.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I am going to foreshadow an alternative motion, which is incorporating option 2. And thank you for the clarity of this. There are several reasons why I think option 2 is best. We've heard around this table so many times that many of us came on here to make some change, and I think this is a really good opportunity of saying how this regional council has changed. We haven't effectively communicated that to each household yet, and what that means. And people talk about rates, and I get really sick of hearing that we have to be careful about putting rates up because it messages, and that's what's going to be on the front page of the ODT. Actually, we need to invest, and they are different things. And we have to take people on that journey. It is their money, it is not our money. And we do it because we have to, and we have to explain that. You cannot do that on a postcard. And I'm sorry, people jumping from a postcard into something else is problematic. We have this here from our good friend, Councillor Brian, here today because he got it in his mail as a document, not because he got a postcard telling him about it. Equally, the school newsletter that Councillor Hope just gave. They're real examples that actually engage people. There's two parts to this. One is that we need to engage residents, not just ratepayers. And my concern is that if you don't pay the rates bill, then you're not going to be engaged with the story. The other part is things like a video from our chair councillors. I'm sorry, anyone listening to me talking right now probably bored stiff around the table, let alone if on YouTube. What we need is a clever engagement, and I've sent round the example that the DCC did many years ago that talks about what we do and why we do it. That's the sort of level we need to get to at a much higher standard, engaging people into why they want that investment. I think anything either driven by cheapness, which this report talks of, I don't think that's the effect of, or relies on something we have ourselves said doesn't work, which is the internet. And yes, I can set up internet banking very, very easily. Doesn't mean that I can get a document and do a survey and search right through a large document easily at home if I've got poor internet. We've said that's an issue in certain areas, certainly in the Catlins, certainly in parts of Tapanui, around the Raise Junction area. it is fraughtly awful to think that you're going to engage effectively with people. We can't even have Zoom meetings with people's faces on here. Poor Councillor Gary has to go to the top of the hill to get it. These are things that need people really engaged effectively. It has to be simple. It has to be more than having to go on clicks on the computer. And I think we've relied too heavily thinking that that is effective. I heard the numbers yesterday for the consultation that we're doing at the moment on the fresh water, and actually I'm disappointed. I put it out on a number of social media, the links to it. I don't think the numbers have been absolutely fantastic. I think we've got a really good opportunity at the moment of engaging with our community. I think they're more engaged than they were a year ago and probably 5 years ago. I went to the last annual plan meeting that was held in Balclutha. It was really well attended. There were 20-something people there. If you think you're affected, you will turn up. And I think people are going to be substantially affected this time. They will turn up. And we should be fronting for that, not one-on-one, but actually having those discussions. And I'm sorry, of all years, it is a lost opportunity to take option one. If it fails, there's no harm done. If we fail with option one, it will be serious. If we fail with option two, it won't matter. There will be no difference. It will be what it would have been. So I think we need to take the bull by the horn and see this as an opportunity to explain and articulate clearly our message to the council, to those that are going to pay for this, why we're doing it.
Can I second that motion?
There's no motion. That was just the talk to the existing motion, and we will now have Councillor Hope.
I was just going to sorry, you've put me right there. I don't need to second it, but I do echo what Councillor Wilson says, and I think it's time to be clever. And I think if it's a whole range of different lots of communication, then that is fine. But this is the big ticket item. And I just think we get one crack at it, and I think we need to do it properly. Thank you.
Councillor Kelleher, then Councillor Forbes.
I won't be supporting the motion as it currently stands. I do support the sentiments of Councillor Wilson. I don't think we've reached a point yet where we can say technology has taken over. I think we discriminate totally against, if the number is 10% that miss out, we are discriminating against those people by not providing them with an avenue to see all of this information. And then for the other 90%, who guarantees that they are actually of a mind, they will say, oh yes, I will actually go in and look at this, watch the videos, do whatever. If that document is there presented in front of them, I think that is the best avenue to get the best possible consultation that we need on something so critical as this. It's not as if we are in business as usual. We are facing major changes. People's rates are going to go up. They need all the information as to why. And to have a postcard of that, I would like to think that everything that's going to be on the postcard will be on the cover of this document, and that will entice them to actually read further into it and have them realise how critical it is. If it's a hard copy document that can sit on a coffee table, it will be looked at more so. We have to have every possible opportunity for people to look at this because it is going to affect everyone, and I think we underdo it to our ratepayers by just putting it in a postcard.
Councillor Forbes.
Okay, I really support option one. I think.
One moment, please, Councillor Forbes. Just, I've got you next, Councillor Laws. So I have seen you, and you're next.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Forbes.
That's all right. I feel that option two is very much just doing what we've always done. And if we want to be clever, there's nothing clever about doing what we've always done. You do something different, and we'll get what we've always got. Very few people engaging. And I went to a freshwater thing last night. There were 5 people there. We actually had a really rich conversation, but there was no way that it was representative of any of our ward or anything like that. And it was well publicised. I saw it in a lot of different places. So it just people weren't interested in turning out at night. Anyway, I feel that, maybe if we think in some areas we need a lot more hard copies, do that. That's fine. But people don't, many people don't post stuff anymore in terms of taking it to a mailbox and putting it in. Those numbers have just been screaming downwards. Option 2 can go everywhere. It can give us huge different ways and lots of ways of communicating without fully getting rid of option 1. And I think where people have strong internet, there is no way on earth they want to be getting a large document in the mail. It annoys them. And it's old, and it's not what I want to get, and I think I can speak for a lot of constituents that it's not what they want to get either. And it doesn't encourage people to engage who aren't used to engaging in our old, people who don't engage in the old style, and we know that's most people, aren't going to be any more inclined to engage in the old style just because we've done it again. They may be more inclined to engage in a new style where we can actually tailor messages for them, for what they're interested in. You can't do that with 100,000 odd booklets. You can do it with many hundreds of thousands of postcards. You can get them in all sorts of places, shops, pubs, libraries, wherever you want. They're really small and easy, and show people how to do it. And if they want to have a hard copy, you make them very simple to pick up, or you deliver them into the areas that you think that people particularly need it. For example, where they haven't got strong internet. But I am definitely supportive of option 2, and would be very disappointed to see us taking a step into last year with option 2. Sorry, option 1 is the one I support, and option 2 is a step no forward.
Thanks, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Laws.
Thank you. I think a postcard is just simply insincere communication. It means that you don't really take the process seriously. And I think that there is a possibility of merging all the clever and new things that are in option 1. Option 2 is still going to do that. It's just adding a proper consultation document that's going to be going to every household. We only get one opportunity every 3 years to communicate what the vision is. I very much doubt in the history of the ORC there has been such massive change proposed ever since the formation in 1989 of what the ORC intend to do over its next 3-year period. So the consultation becomes more critical, not less. It needs to become more elaborate, more stratified, more professional, and delivering it into every letterbox gives an opportunity for that to occur. But it doesn't in any way, shape or form diminish the opportunity for other people to be contacted in other ways, and whether it's through community newspapers, postcards in pubs or whatever. We just need to touch all bases, not just a few. And I want to pick up very much on what Gary Kelleher has just reminded us all of. We need to try and get to 100% of our constituents. I know for the elderly how they prefer to read and receive their information, and I know that that's effective. It is a communication. I also am aware at the moment that, and this is the really interesting thing, that and you're probably wondering how are those two issues related, but the Council of Educational Research in New Zealand has just noted that our writing and reading standards are declining in New Zealand. They think there's a possibility of digital learning and not receiving their information in the usual way. And they're noticing this in our primary schools in New Zealand right now. So what I'm trying to say to you is it's more likely through a consultation document you'll have a more in-depth appreciation of what you see, on something that you're seeing digitally. So for those reasons, I support option 2 and I cannot support option 1.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly, Councillor Kelleher.
Just to be clear, what I'm reading here is that option 1 and option 2 are almost exactly the same, other than option 1 is a postcard and option 2 is a full document. So correct. Option 2 will still get the videos, the online. Right. We're not saying all that goes away.
No.
We are saying all that is there as well for all those who are so attuned to, as Councillor Forbes is saying, that can't stomach hard copies. That's all still there for them, but for those who aren't, then a hard copy is there for them, is what's included in option 2.
Yeah, the only variation is that the ones that don't want hard copies will get, so that's the only people you'll offend in that way. Yes, yes, correct. Yeah. Certainly.
Option 1, anyone can still have a hard copy. They just have to phone and ask for it. It's that simple.
Yeah, but the issue is that they have to phone and ask for it.
They shouldn't have to ask for it.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies my...
Councillor Robertson, as the mover.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Calvert, I missed that.
Yes.
My apologies.
I receive my council papers in hard copy because I find them sometimes difficult to read. Just using and to me making notes. I know you can through Diligent, but it's not so easy. I also, some people may be pleased to know, managed to involve myself with internet banking. They're two separate things. I couldn't be telling other people out there that they shouldn't need hard copies in the way I do, and I appreciate, Michael, that might be an old person's thing, but here we go. So it seems to me that since I think it's easier to read things in hard copy, it would make sense for me to go along with the fact that that might be true for other people. Might not be, but it might well be. It will cost more, but it allows people to have them, look at them, turn the pages over, turn back to them, talk to somebody else, whatever, a wee bit more easily, I think. I really like the new things, and I reject the idea that it's either the new way or the old way. Option B has a lot of new way things, and it just has hard copies with it, I think. So that's the direction I want to go.
Can I ask a question, please, Chair?
Certainly, we'll go with the question first. Yep. Yes, Councillor Forbes.
Would we be able to have different hard copies for different communities? Would we be able to tailor message? I would suspect that we wouldn't.
It's far more difficult. I really think we couldn't commit to that. It would just make it so complex.
Not of the consultation document itself. The consultation document is one document.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And to tailor that, you'd be into. I don't even know where that would fit in legislation. The auditors would probably have a major problem with that.
Yeah. You can't. I'm sure you can't.
Yeah.
Just so that we know the difference between those two is that one of the big differences.
Thank you, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I just, from my perspective, I've actually found the discussion quite interesting. I'm actually finding it really difficult to decide which of option 1 or option 2 I should support. I found Councillor Forbes' argument on option 1 very compelling, and Kate and Michael and Gary's on option 2 very compelling as well. I sense I'm going to go, believe it or not, with option 2 for simply the reason that, you know, we're doing away possibly with the hall meetings and all this type of stuff, and this is significant. This is going to be significant. I don't want people thinking that we haven't done in a transparent way. Anyway, I'll shut up because it's not, but I'm just
Thank you, Councillor Scott. We'll go to Councillor Robertson to sum up.
I think pretty much everything's been said, but I haven't been swayed to option 2. I still believe option 1, given the statistics that 90% of the community is digitally connected. I agree with Councillor Forbes that it will annoy a lot of people to receive a wordy document. It's not a new versus old approach. They're actually pretty similar approaches, let's be honest. One, it provides you with a brief thing saying, okay, we're doing our LTP, it's really important, it might have some key messages for your community. You can then request to have the whole copy delivered to you, or you could go pick it up at a local spot right near you in the community, like somewhere you go all the time, like the library, or somewhere you get your B card or something like that. So you can still get your hard copy, no trouble. There are people that we know aren't into reading or writing as well, and they can actually ring us up. So they've probably heard about it on the radio through talking to people. Ring us up. There's ways that we can engage. I've heard about the elderly community. I'd like to talk a wee bit about the youth community as well, which we've touched on. Postcards can be in every cafe, can be at places that all of community frequent in the numbers, and it engages a whole sectors of the community that perhaps we aren't thinking about when we're thinking of the 10% that aren't digitally connected. So I still like that approach, and yeah, that's one I'll vote for.
So we have the recommendation 1, 2, 3 and 4 up on board. We'll test that. All those in favour? I'll call for a division. And we'll have a division.
Yep. Did you call it?
Yep.
Councillor Calvert?
No.
Councillor Deekers away. Councillor Forbes?
Yes.
Councillor Forbes, do you support the motion?
Yes, I support the motion.
Councillor Hobbs is away. Councillor Hope?
No.
Councillor Kelleher?
No.
Councillor Laws?
No.
Councillor Malcolm?
Yes.
Councillor Noon?
Yes.
Councillor Robertson?
Yes.
Councillor Scott?
No.
Councillor Wilson?
No.
And the motion fails.
The motion fails. 6 votes to 4. Councillor Wilson.
As foreshadowed, I'd like to move 1 as it is, 2. I think I would rather put the draft in, because it seems to be that from reading everything, it's actually a working document, or it's not necessarily draft, but it's changing as we go, and I don't want to see it as set in stone. That's why I've got the word draft there. I'm happy to have an alternative word, but it's a plan. I don't want to be tied to it as we learn what we're doing and going on more.
Certainly, we just
on that bit.
Options 1 and 2 won't change. The key messages and what we consult on are the things that may change.
Okay. And I'll put it on option 2. I think it would be really good to add, and maybe it's a 5, to ask during this conversation how people would like to be communicated with. I think it's a useful, and we can, say by email, by mail, or by, is your internet good enough? This is the most important communication we will have in this term. It is the best and most exciting opportunity to engage with the community. In my mind, I'm really excited by the action and the direction that this council is going, but it comes at a substantial cost to every ratepayer and will require and involve every resident. To my mind, that requires the best that we can do, and that's more than a postcard can do. What this document looks like, I'm not even sure that I'm clear from the communications and engagement plan. I hope that it will be referred as quickly as possible through maybe another committee, which is that communication. I can't remember all our terms of our committees now, and is quite strategic. It can, in my mind, be colour-coded to areas. You can have a page that says this relates to Queenstown, this relates to Clinton, this relates to what we may fund for regional bus services, a whole lot of things. So I have got no problems about giving different messages. I think the main thing is that we ask people to read it and to understand it and to ring us and to talk to us. And I think we're all up for that. I'm certainly delighted that we now have phone numbers and email addresses on our website, but we need to get out and about and make sure people know it. I delight in the thought that I can refer them to something, that they should have it, that they can act immediately, whether they've got internet or not. I think option 2 is the only sensible choice in this case, and I welcome everyone voting for it.
And we have Councillor Calvert to second that motion.
Can I just make one point?
You may. I am asking for discussion on that motion, and you may do that now, sir.
Thank you. The one point, although this is a consultation document, I think we should not underestimate the importance of it as a communication device as well. So although a lot of people may not, or the majority won't respond in a proactive way to the consultation document they receive, the communication of what we are doing and why is critical to our involvement with our communities. So that's the other reason I like the extended form of communication or consultation document. It gives us a much better chance to communicate to every household about what we're doing and why over the next 3 years as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the new motion? And I'd like to make a wee comment there. I'm sure that our communication team will have that certainly in mind, Councillor Laws.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? If there be no further discussion, we'll put that vote.
Aye.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Rossler. Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Quarterly report 7.2.
Right, Jasmine table. Jasmine's been the engine room behind quarterly reporting since the beginning of the year, so I thought it's time to get up to the table and introduce her.
Welcome, Jasmine.
So just on that, some of the eagle-eye of you out there are going to notice some housekeeping changes that Jasmine's ushered in for the new financial year. She's she's refreshed the format so it's easier for you to follow. And we picked up, your feedback from last year around some of the nuancing of, just try and get your head around the amount of data that was in front of you in this report. So we've hopefully tightened that up. And we've brought the summary material, the summary page that's up the front as it always has been, and importantly all the measures are up the front as well, so you can see those, which are important. And also you'll notice that the measures compared to last year, there's been a refresh. And in a non-COVID world, I would have workshopped that with you. We just didn't get that opportunity, and that was unfortunate because I know that you were keen to. Having said that, we will be doing that with you for the LTP measures.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But the point is, throughout last year we picked up those real problem measures, and Jasmine's worked with the managers to both rectify them and bring in new ones that are more meaningful. And we'll just continue on that journey. So looking at the report itself, so the overall performance, there's 63 targets there, and we're signalling that 52 are currently on track first quarter, and 6 are not on track, may not be achieved, and 1 we're signalling red at this first quarter. And then getting into the performance against levels of service section, it teases out what those 5 measures are. The 6 targets that are flagged partially achieved, and it's across biodiversity, the state of the environment reporting, which importantly they're signalling that they expect that's from yellow going green. So it's just off to a slow start, but we'll pick that up. And flood and drainage, there's some targets there that we're flagging yellow. The one red is associated with our Laguna process, and again, we're boxing high there at 97%, so there isn't actually a problem there. It's a very high aspirational target, and we really push hard to keep it in the high 90s as we have done in the past. And then it's signalling that there's 4 targets there that aren't going to be reported this year, or later in the year. Yeah. And look, the financial performance section there, there's I think 6, there's 9 activities flagged there. 6 of those are under expenditure, and they include freshwater implementation, biodiversity, biosecurity, state environment, flood protection, river management, and natural hazards. And there's one over expenditure there associated with emergency management, and that's COVID related, and we're hoping to get some NEMA recovery on that. And then there's 3 activities where there's two activities where it's a little more complexity going on with revenue involved, and that's the big one. There's transport. We were down on revenue, and that's a fare box issue. So that's the flyover of financial performance.
Sorry, just a question on that one. So we have under emergency, you're hoping for some government funding there, but on the transport, is there additional government funding coming through COVID to meet that shortfall for us, or stead? No, because the funding level was set off what we'd been doing previously. So some of that shortfall relates to it's a difference between where they've agreed to fund based on what our previous year's actual performance was and what we had factored in to our budget, and into our plans when we did them. That of course our patronage and fare revenue would have been increasing, because we've been increasing year on year, whereas they're taking it back to a historical. So we do end up with a shortfall that unfortunately, they won't fund the full amount. Thank you. Continue, Mike.
That's probably where I would leave it. That's sort of a flyover. We can get into detailed questions if there are any.
Are there any questions? Councillor Calvert.
Just perhaps a wee bit more nuanced response with page 56 or whatever it is in there. With the consent money, 176,000 increase in income and 474,000 increase in processing the consents. Seems like a big lack of income against consents being something that is sort of paid for.
Yeah, the thing you've got to realise with consents is there's 2 parts to it. Consent processing is 100% fees and charges, and then there's consent administration, public inquiry, appeals, all of those other parts of the consent process is not fees and charge, is not recovered via fees and charges, and that's general rate funded. What we are seeing is, yes, there's an increase in the processing costs and there's a corresponding increase in fees and charges to cover that, but there's also an increase in the general rate-funded consent activity, and that's the difference that you're seeing there.
Maybe that description is just what's throwing me, because it says there's a corresponding increase in costs included in other expenses below of 474,000 to process the additional consents. And if we're processing the additional consents with that money, that's one part of the thing.
Yeah,
But
it's not.
I'm wondering whether it isn't actually that those costs aren't all processed. The consents.
No, they're not.
Actually, partly.
Yeah, they're part of the general consents process. They're not necessarily processing the consent.
Processing additional consents. They're part of the process.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Just a comment from me.
Certainly.
Yeah. Just to Jasmine, the format and the measurements pages, I mean, it's just so much more palatable. I really appreciate it for a lay person, my category. It's just so much easier to get your head round. So thank you very much for that. Well done.
So, with that in mind, would you like to move that we receive this report?
Absolutely, I'll move.
And the seconder, Councillor Calvert. All those in favour?
Oh,
No, we're going to go here for we're just receiving it. We're still going to discuss it.
Okay. All those in favour then.
Let's try.
We're going there, and then to Councillor Scott.
Okay.
Councillor Robertson.
Thanks. I was just, great, clear, easy to track. Obviously, it's Q1, so I mean, it's limited in terms of progress and where we're at. But overall, though, we are achieving and on track for Q1, which is fantastic. Just looking at transport, that one's pretty worth noting, I think, because we've got some patronage issues, which obviously comes because of COVID and what's happening in communities. But Dunedin in September, where are we? Decrease of 11%, but in Queenstown, decrease of 41%. So just planning and going forward as a council, I think that's something which people probably read and picked up on, but we need to be thinking about. It's going to have some cost ramifications as well. Thanks.
So, Councillor Hope.
Thank you. It was just very small, just to echo what Chair Noon said, or Councillor Noon said, it is easy to read. Thank you for those visually prefer something like this. I think it's really well put together, and I would just like to thank you for it.
And Councillor Scott.
And just to reaffirm, I look forward to the discussion on new measures for the next term or the next year. But when you look at this report, some congratulations needs to be made. We're on track for 52. We're not on track for 6. We won't achieve 1, and we're delayed 4. And this is in, a COVID environment, a challenging economic environment, huge amount of work going on. This organisation's going through a bit of a curve in terms of demands and staff and all this type of stuff. And you look at it, and it's mainly green. Great. Thank you.
I hope the environment's green too. I wasn't going to throw that in there, but look, just echo what Councillor Scott has said. A, the report's very good, and B, Mrs. Gardner, congratulations to your staff through these very trying times that we are achieving at a very high level, and if you could pass it on to the full staff from this group anyway. So thanks very much indeed. So we have a mover and a seconder. For all those in favour of receiving this report? Aye. Aye. Against? And we move on to item 7.3, which is the finance report. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
just makes it easier to sort of have a think about it than the one that's presented. It's really good.
Yeah.
Just one moment. I'm just trying to find a page. I'll be right with you.
Page
Sarah. Yeah, page 54.
So I've got Sarah here who's prepared the report. So this sits alongside the quarterly report you just saw, but this is the pure financials. So you've got revenue and expenses, or the old P&L balance sheet, the Treasury report, and just a summary of expenditure by activity at the end. We'll take the paper and the cover paper with the comments as read, but just one thing to note is that when we look at this, although we see the financials in the previous quarterly report, what you see particularly in the revenue and expenses is slightly different, because the comprehensive revenue and expenses only talks about operating expenditure, whereas when we look at the quarterly report you just saw and the expenditure summary at the back, it's total expenditure by activity, so it incorporates operating and capital expenditure. So if you were just looking and you thought, oh, is there some differences, that's most likely what you'll be seeing. But yeah, as I said, take the cover paper, which explains the variances as read. To be fair, it's it's not too far away, given that it's only one quarter in. So we're not expecting to be too far out at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Noon.
It's an operational question, so it's probably for Gavin. Both this report and the previous report highlighted that the Terrace Stead project is delayed, and I just wondered what the reasons were for that. Thanks, Gavin.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman, that's an error in my reporting. It's actually well underway, and we're expecting it to be substantially complete by Christmas. Tanks in the ground, so it's going very well.
Thank you very much.
I just note, remember, this is a quarterly, so this was as at September. So I don't know whether at that point it might not have actually been underway, or...
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's probably the case, but it has accelerated real quick subsequent to that point.
Excellent.
So that's just timing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Scott?
Yeah, this report once again puts some numbers around the bus situation, and just looking at that, like, it seems to me in some ways we've looked at the bus fare scenario as a bit of a trial for the future in terms of a low fare, and I just wonder how, or whether, some communication or promotion is actually required, because we've set a low fare in Dunedin, and at some point we're going to review that. Do we need to be saying to our community, use it or lose it? Or are we just, we're in a changed environment. I welcome any feedback or discussion on that.
Yep, I believe a report's coming back on that.
Okay.
Yes, through Mr. Chairman, the report on what to do at the end of the fare trial is coming to the 9 December council meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you. Just under number 31 in the report, which is under long-term investments managed fund, I see during the quarter one we put $1 million into the fund just to top up the trading account, I assume.
We took $1 million out of the fund.
It come out of the fund, went in to top up our trading account, and I assume that once rates are paid, then that $1 million is put back into the fund.
No, I wasn't proposing to put it back. Traditionally, we haven't withdrawn money out of the managed fund because we haven't needed it. From a cash flow perspective, obviously our working capital funds ran down heading into 31 October when we received the rates. So we had an overdraft facility in place, which we didn't have to use, but we basically, even with that $1 million, we had utilised all of our available cash. If you look from the return we get on the managed fund, this is something that I'll build into our financial forecasts going forward. But a portion of what we receive in the managed fund is interest and dividends, so it's cash income. the reason we have the managed funds set up as it is with a 50-50 growth income is because really, we want some cash return. So what I need to look at is an amount every year or every 6 months that we would withdraw from the fund to use for cash, to use to pay our working capital requirements, because we've factored that into our budgets that we will be earning money and interest and investment income to pay for some of our activities. So this is just the first time that we've done it. I think the number it might be a little bit less than that, but if you look, it's probably around about 750,000. But sort of anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million probably will need to withdraw every year. The fund itself will still keep going up because you've still got the growth portion, which is the capital gain portion.
So we wouldn't look to rectify that through increases in rates to our ratepayers.
No.
We would continue to diminish the fund.
No, but like I said, the fund won't diminish because offsetting that is the gain that you're receiving on the equity portion of the fund. So even with that $1 million return withdrawal, the fund still, I think it dropped to about 23 point something million without looking at the numbers. We started the year before at 22.5 million. So we withdrew $1 million and we were still basically $1 million ahead of where we were. So that it will keep going up, just not at the rate that we've seen.
And we're not highlighting a need that we are going to be year by year diminishing the overall capital. We're just drawing more on the interest on it as opposed to what we have done in the past.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Noon.
The PT subsidy that was paid out during COVID, for some reason I can recall it being mentioned at a regional sector group meeting that it was going to come through in 2 tranches, and I'm not 100% sure whether the second tranche had been committed to. Are you familiar with that, Nick? Or
yeah. There was a lot happened with Wakako Tahi's subsidy as a result of COVID. The first thing was they underwrote all the fares when fares went to zero. Then as we moved through towards the end of the last financial year in June, and the country came back out of level 4 and 3 and things started up again, obviously they wanted to get fare revenue reinstated. Now we were in the position where, because we were rolling out the B card, we had taken the kit off the buses, so they agreed to continue to underwrite us through until we got we were able to reinstate fare collection, which was beginning of September for Dunedin and a bit later in Queenstown. But in the meantime, they're still underwriting the shortfall that we're seeing, I believe. Is that correct? But it's complicated given that of where you're measuring it from, and even where we've seen the underwrite amounts that we put in and say, here's what we want, it takes time to get all of that. So we're seeing sort of timing differences as well between when we receive the money and where actually, we need to record it as revenue. So, but as we've seen in the numbers, we're still not getting that. Obviously, we're not where we want to be because our services are still being provided largely as they were. Those costs have been increasing, but we were anticipating increased services would mean increased patronage, it would mean increased fare revenue, but that's dropping back, and all we're getting underwritten is the lower level that we had been receiving in the past. So, there's a lot going on in that space.
thank you.
Any further questions? I've someone happy to move that. Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Hope, thirded by Councillor Calvert. All those in favour?
Aye.
We'll move on to 7.4. Thank you very much, Sarah. which is our rate strike collection.
Yeah, which I'll cover this one. The other Sarah who wrote this can't be here, but at this time of the year, we always just, for the information of councillors, just update what happened with the 31 October due date. Obviously, particularly interesting this year, given that this is post-COVID. Everybody's got we were a bit concerned. Would that mean that fewer people actually paid? But interestingly, the payment percentage has stayed pretty consistent with where it was the year before, and we're not seeing any particular issues with people being unable to pay, and we are seeing, as usual, just that continual increase in the uptake of the triennial DD and an increase in people who are interested in getting their invoice via email, which are just two of the things that we focus on, and just slowly chipping away at increasing the percentages that are coming through in those two things.
Yeah. Councillor Wilson.
I'm happy to move the report when it's time to, but the question I've got is, and I'm not sure that where it comes, I presume from this we've had no applications for rates for remission?
No.
Yeah. Thank you.
What we get, we don't typically get rates remission. We get people who, and typically it's only once they've received a penalty notice. They might have issues and whatever, but we work through, in most cases, payment arrangements.
Yep, I see that in 5. Yeah.
And it works well.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I presume that. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Councillor Kelleher.
Do we budget to receive all rates on due date?
From a cash flow perspective, no.
The reason I ask is just the penalty amounts are quite substantial.
Yeah.
Are they factored for in our overall cash flow that we would expect to have a percentage of penalty amount?
Yeah. Our budget assumes that we will receive rates penalties every year. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
If we receive more, what happens to that?
Well, that's just an amount. It goes effectively into the general reserve. So rates penalties is similar to like investment interest and investment income, and it just goes against what your general rate requirement is, the same as the port dividend and investment income.
Wasn't the targeted rates in proportion?
No, because we're talking about like there 400,000. To do anything to try and work out specifically where it applied would just be an administrative nightmare.
I'm just wondering whether there's opportunity, if there were years where there were substantial amounts of penalty rates that were received for whatever reason, but we hadn't budgeted for them, there might be an opportunity to use that, say, in the eco fund, which is always oversubscribed.
Yeah, but effectively we do, because the eco fund's just funded out of the general reserve, which is where this goes to. Yeah, but as you can see, the number it's fairly consistently been a consistent percentage of the total rates. It has increased in dollar terms, but that's because our rates number has increased. Yeah, but we're still only talking about 400,000. It's and you've also got to remember it's paying for. We have to do penalties. We do another run of penalty notices and all the administration that goes behind it. So it's not like we're making money out of that.
Yeah. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you for highlighting that issue. Mine's a slightly different question on the same point, though, is when did we last revise the actual interest rate for penalties? Because I appreciate a 10% in other times was probably a fair penalty. In this day and age, it possibly is fairly high. I know it's a deterrent, but I'm not sure that that's given. I'm not sure that the reason people aren't paying this year may be not.
Maybe usurious.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether we should be, how often we reconsider that rate.
We haven't done, in the time I've been here, but yeah, I sort of look at it and think, if you look, it depends on how much the rates are that they haven't paid. But if we're talking about, the average sort of rate, your general rate and total rate of say $200, if they haven't paid it, we're talking about $20. even that, I'd say for some people who don't want to pay, that's probably not $20 isn't an incentive to make them pay. You drop it lower, there'll be even less incentive.
And I get that, and I'm not worried about those. I'm worried about, say, the big hotel, who will have a substantial rate, and they're deciding, do I pay my rates on time or keep that person employed? There are interesting discussions to be had, but I think that's a long-term plan discussion, that we set those interest rates, and happy to do that at a different day.
Yeah, but then I look and I go, I want the rates on the due date, and you drop the rate so that we can become a funding mechanism for hotels. I'm not really interested in that.
Yeah. So I think the question probably really is that rate of 10% relative to today's economic time? So worthy of thought.
Remember, it's not an interest rate; it's a penalty.
Absolutely, yes, yep, 100%. Any further questions?
I'll second it. Kate's moving it.
Kate's moved it. Councillor Wilson, seconded. Councillor Calvert. All those in favour?
Aye.
Move now to recommendations from the Audit and Risk Committee. Does someone move that those recommendations be accepted? Calvert, Noon, those in favour?
Aye.
And we move to item number 9.
I move, Mr. Chair.
So moved. Councillor seconded. Councillor Kelleher, those in favour?
Aye.
That we now move into public excluded.
Could you stop the live stream, please?
And could you please stop the live stream?